With that, let's give Teresa a warm Georgia Tech welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I'm going to go up on the stage here. Well, good afternoon. I just got back from Dublin to see Georgia Tech beat BCU in the Aer Lingus Dublin game. That was really cool. Aren't you guys proud? They went all the way to Dublin and beat BCU, and it was actually not an exhibition game, a real game, right? So congratulations to Georgia Tech. It was a fantastic experience. My husband goes to Georgia Tech. I'm involved in a lot of Irish things in the community, so we decided we'd make a weekend of it in Dublin. So it was great. Great to see some friends from Georgia Tech and everybody out there rooting for the hometown. Made Atlanta proud for sure. So I have a question for you. So how old were you when you were first asked what you wanted to do when you grew up? 4, 5, maybe around the time you were using a fork, maybe when you learned Itsy Bitsy Spider or all those words. I'm willing to bet that a lot of you have actually stopped answering that question around 6 because you were tired of people asking you. And maybe you even started believing that that's what you really wanted to do, the answer that you gave at 6 years old. In fact, maybe you're here at Georgia Tech studying to do exactly that. Raise your hand. This is the participation point in the talk now. Raise your hand if you're studying or planning to study for what you've always wanted to do. Oh, I got a couple of takers there. Great. Now raise your hand if you're studying or planning to study for the most recent 25 things that you wanted to do. All right, lots more hands. Great. Finally, raise your hand if you have no idea what you're studying or planning to study because you have no idea what you really want to do. Awesome. This is great. You know, this means you're really thinking about it. And after all, you don't come to Tech to party, right? If you came to Tech, you're on a mission. You probably have been for a while. But I'm not surprised that for most of you, that mission has probably changed or is yet to be totally defined, thus the 25 items. And I bet you're expecting me to say, that's okay. You don't have to know. You can figure it out later. Well, you don't. The decisions you make right about now are going to affect what happens the rest of your life. I saw a TED Talk recently titled 20 is not the new 30. The speaker, a clinical psychologist, says 2/3 of your lifetime income growth happens in the first 10 years of your career. That's right about now. And 80% of your life's most significant events, like marriage, buying your first home, having your first child, happen by the age of 35. So you're getting to that stage right about now, or you're nearing it. Your brain is going to have a major growth spurt. It's the last in your mid-20s. It's a good thing you're here at Georgia Tech really working your brain right about now. What I'm saying is this, right about now is much more critical than we've led you to believe previously. And right about now is when it actually makes sense to ask, what do you want to do when you grow up? Before you answer the question, though, let me frame it a little differently. What do you want to be, not do, be when you grow up? You're on a mission, but what's your vision? I know I changed the terminology a little bit on you, but that's for a reason. Up until now, your answer to the what do you want to be when you grow up question has probably been some profession. Engineering, marketing, accounting, IT, operations, supply chain management. What I'm suggesting is that you think about your answer a little differently. Ask yourself, what do you want to be? The answer to that question is to the end game, your purpose. Influencer, truth seeker, problem solver, that's your vision. Visions can expand, but they don't change, not until they're at least fully realized. Right about now, when you're studying for a career, laying the groundwork for important milestones, shaping your thinking and personality for the rest of your life, now's the best time to define your vision. And honestly, as your generation, you really already have. I know millennials care. I head up what we call a BRG at UPS and talk to a lot of our millennials at UPS about what you do, about how you affect society and the world around it. You want a career that fulfills a vision. And you're demanding that companies give you your time and talents, that you give your time and talents to understand your vision. According to the surveys, you expect businesses to focus on something other than profits, like people, products, and purpose. You choose companies that share your values. You maintain the same values as you climb the corporate ladder. And increasingly, those values revolve around making the world a better place, which means that many of you want to work for a company with volunteerism and corporate social responsibility in its DNA. Isn't that true? Yep, okay. Is that who you are? And right on time for two reasons. One, because you're in your 20s-ish, which is a momentous time in your life. And two, because the world desperately needs people who care. There have been few times in our history when the calls for help have been more urgent. Pick a need: hunger, disaster, poverty, war, disease, water. Societal changes, endangered environments, changing demographics, and urbanization. One thing's for sure, we can't keep going like this. Somebody has to do something. But who? Governments don't have the money or the meeting of minds, clearly. Civil society has the motivation and information, but not the operational muscle. Who does that leave? Business. Business is in the best position to help solve our biggest problems. Business has the reach and the resources. It's the center of gravity for innovation and new ideas. Business has big project management skills. We have the commercial talent. And we clearly have the incentive to create a world that is strong enough, fair enough, and healthy enough to support our growth. According to Skoll World Forum, 51 of the world's 100 largest economies are in fact businesses. They're operating on such a large scale. So it's little surprise that many expect business, along with governments and civic organizations, to create a better world. But is business ready to step up? This can be a tough question to answer. Here's the hard truth. No matter how much good you want to do in the world, you still have to turn a profit. You still have to make a return. Almost 50 years ago, American economist Milton Friedman said, "The only social responsibility of business is to increase profits." In Friedman's opinion, social responsibility was a personal responsibility. In his opinion, an executive's responsibility was to make as much money as possible for shareholders, while conforming to laws and business and social customs, of course. Fortunately for society, opinions have come a long way since Friedman's days. I think that has a lot to do with your generation. You said profits matter, but that people and principle matter more. And we heard you and are listening. Business figured out that if we want the best and brightest like you, and we do, then we have to find ways to do good for business while doing good for society. Personally, and obviously I'm a little biased, I think UPS has that figured out. UPS's opinion is this: doing the right thing for society can also do the right thing for business, if you do them the right way. And what's the right way? Well, it's a matter of choice. 3 choices, actually. First choice, choosing causes that align with the company's core values and core competencies. Second, choosing to become involved without any expectation other than helping people and communities in need. And third, choosing people and partners that share your vision. At UPS, our core competency is logistics. Logistics determines the flow of goods and services from manufacturers and producers to businesses and end consumers. It's part science, it's a little art, and many, many parts hard work. UPS is a critical link in the supply chain that connects businesses, customers, and consumers in a global economy. It is estimated that 2% of the world's GDP and over 6% of the US GDP flow through the UPS network. It's a network that includes 100,000 of those brown package cars that you see on the streets and other vehicles, more than 100,000 drivers, and more than 600 aircraft. We operate warehouses and distribution facilities around the world. Our tagline is our promise: united problem solvers. We believe all those assets and all those people with all of their experience are a great resource for our customers' toughest problems, as well as some of the world's toughest challenges. It's also easy to see how that kind of infrastructure would be great for our business. But is it good for anyone else? Definitely. In a world of growing and urgent need, we believe logistics is the key to doing a lot more than just moving goods. We think it can change communities, give people more opportunity, and create a better world. That seems a lot to ask of a 7-word letter like logistics, so let me explain. Let's go back to that list of challenges: hunger, disaster, war, poverty, disease, water. Many problems, one response. Goods must move, help must arrive, resources and energies must be focused. Logistics is simply taking what we do best and putting it to work on things the world needs most. We think of it as the humanitarian side of logistics. All that can sound pretty clinical, so I brought a few pictures to help you understand how logistics works in human terms. Consider poverty. There are nearly 800 million hungry people in the world. More than 160 million malnourished children under the age of 5 suffer from stunted growth. 22,000 children die each day from starvation and other health issues caused by poverty. And the problem isn't just over there anymore. In Metro Atlanta and North Georgia, more than 700,000 of our neighbors turn to food pantries and meal service programs to feed themselves and their families. Here are a few more pictures. These are pictures of food, exactly what the men, women, and children in those previous pictures need most. But as you can see, food doesn't always make it to the dinner table. That's why I say the problem isn't about not having enough food. There's plenty of it. It's available to feed people who need it. The problem is getting it to them. About 1/3 of all food produced worldwide, worth about $1 trillion, gets lost or wasted. It rots in warehouses, at border crossings, and in the fields. In India, about 30% of fruits and vegetables rot before they reach the market because they are not refrigerated properly. In sub-Saharan Africa, farmers lose 30 to 40% of their crop after harvesting to insects, rodents and the rain. Here in the US, we put more than 35 tons of once perfectly good food into the garbage every year, an increase of 300% since the 1960s. Thinking about it that way, hunger is not just a food problem, it's a logistics problem. And it's made up of problems that crop up in every part of the supply chain, from storage and transportation to packaging, shipping, customs, road networks, and tracking. These are problems UPS knows a lot about. They're problems that bother me deeply, both professionally and personally, but they're also problems that we're in a unique position to address. By bringing together our network, our experience, and our concern. When earthquakes, floods, and wildfires cut off communities from medication and other relief supplies, when political and civil unrest forced refugees to flee war-torn regions in the world in hopes of better life, when pandemics threaten the well-being of millions, these are situations whose outcomes often depend on the ability to respond quickly with food and other supplies. You see the faces of these people on the news. What you don't see is what stands in the way of getting the help to them. You don't see the roads leading into their villages and communities that have been washed out, or the meager airports and landing strips that have been devastated. It's the last mile to get to people in desperate circumstances that's often the most critical and difficult. And that's where logistics and the people who understand this delicate blend of science and art become so valuable. Choosing causes where logistics can have the biggest impact is the first of the three choices we make to do business the right way. Being united problem solvers is our brand promise because it's the best way for us to achieve our vision, which is connecting a global universe community through intelligent logistics networks. Our humanitarian logistics capabilities naturally reside throughout our system, but they're orchestrated through the UPS Foundation. The foundation works with governments, nonprofits, and communities to get relief supplies to areas affected by disasters. That's where the second step in doing business the right way, getting involved without expecting anything in return, comes in. With our transportation and logistics expertise, we are often among the first organization on the ground in places that have been hit the hardest. Disasters don't usually come with warnings. Any kind can strike anywhere, anytime. Ebola in West Africa, a refugee crisis in Syria, a typhoon in the Philippines. In 2015, UPS sent over 300 shipments of food and supplies across 46 countries. Of course, disasters also happen close to home. With more than 30 inches of rain falling in southern Louisiana recently, flooding reached historic levels. More than 20,000 Louisiana residents were rescued from the devastation. UPS responded by working with the Red Cross to transport 6 trailers of relief items and shelter supplies to aid residents during this time of crisis. The real heroes, however, are not our planes, trains, and trucks. The heroes are our people, the women and men who give their own time and energy just because they believe it's the right thing to do. We believe giving means more than writing a check. We think it means combining employees' skill, passion, and time with our logistics expertise, transportation needs, and philanthropy. In 2015, we invested nearly 2.4 million volunteer hours and $110 million into our global communities. Our employees and their families around the world have also made a commitment to 20 million volunteer hours of service by the end of this decade. The nature of our work gives us a great opportunity to connect our business with the needs of the communities in the 220 countries and territories around the world where we operate. We are committed to making a measurable difference, and we're committed to delivering packages more efficiently and sustainably, creating more connections around the world, and finding more ways to take action and give back. Some have called this philosophy shared value or connected capitalism. Whichever term you choose, it's the notion that there's no longer a strict division between what benefits business and what benefits the people and communities business serves. And when you choose your cause based on the benefit to society, as opposed to the good press you'll generate, then you're doing business the right way. Of course, the issues we're talking about are too complex for one organization to solve alone. That's why, after choosing the cause that makes sense to use as our best use of our capabilities, we expand the impact by choosing great partners. For example, UPS, GAVE, the Vaccine Alliance, and Zipline, a robotics company, have launched a project to deliver blood vaccines and vaccines to rural health clinics in Rwanda via drones. The project is expected to serve 14 rural health facilities in Rwanda and reach approximately 6 million people. And one of our best partners is right here, Georgia Tech. By combining our sponsorship with your educational resources, UPS and Georgia Tech are sharing knowledge and best practices at Georgia Tech's Health and Humanitarian Systems Conference, helping practitioners from nonprofits in developing countries earn certificates in health and humanitarian supply chain management, providing paid summer STEM internships in industry workplaces and university laboratories for kindergarten through grade 12 science, math, and technology teachers, teaching students about innovation in transportation and logistics through programs in your School of Industrial and Systems Engineering. Plus, we hire a lot of really talented tech graduates. Mallory Soldner is just one of them. She works on my team, as a matter of fact. Mallory did her PhD research with Georgia Tech's Health and Humanitarian Systems Center. She received her PhD from Georgia Tech in Operations Research. UPS sponsored one of her years of research while she worked on optimization project for the UN World Food Program. Today, Mallory is UPS's Advanced Analytics Manager. In her TED Talk that she'll give tomorrow, she'll talk about data philanthropy and what we can accomplish when the private sector shares data and partners for sustainable development. Doing business the right way comes back to those three choices I mentioned earlier. Choosing the right causes for the right reasons, and then partnering with the right people to support them. That strategy summed up in 4 words: play to our strengths. Playing to our strengths starts with people. They're amazing, dedicated, caring, talented. Ask anyone at UPS, they are our competitive differentiation. They leverage the power of logistics and turn it into human logistics. Our approach is to connect our people to the power of the logistics network, and both to the needs of our nonprofit partners. To understand what all this has to do with you, think back what I said at the beginning, and about the decisions you're making about now. When you ask yourself who you want to be, you should also ask if the profession you're pursuing is the best path to fulfill your vision. Right about now, getting the job is probably your goal, but don't let that cloud your vision. Chances are that vision is going to include something about doing the right things for society. If it does, choosing the right business and the right company gets a whole lot easier. Like a good business, you can do the right things for yourself and do the right things for society if you do them in the right way. It's a matter of choice. You only have two. First, choose the company that stands for what you stand for, the one whose vision aligns with yours. And don't settle for anything less than a company that says it wants to change the world. IKEA says it wants to create a better everyday life. Starbucks wants to inspire and nurture the human spirit. At UPS, we're all about connecting a global community through intelligent logistics networks. Richard Branson, founder of Virgin Group, said it pretty clearly. If you aren't making a difference in other people's lives, you shouldn't be in business. And if not us, then who? By us, I mean you and me. Right about now, you're already planning to make a difference, which is awesome. There's no better time to do it. And you can rest assured that once you've defined your vision, the world of business is waiting for you. Companies like UPS. UPS is about making a difference by making the most of its strengths and solving problems for customers. In any situation, goods must move, infrastructure must be captured or built, information points must connect, talent must be coordinated, barriers and choke points must be removed. Efficiencies to sync up the supply chain must be created. Making those things happen is what we do. We solve the problems that get in the way. United Problem Solvers is not just our tagline. It's what we do. It's what our purpose is.
Around the world, pregnant women are at risk of losing their babies, all because of something many of us take for granted. When expectant mothers get the flu shot, they stay healthy and give their baby a better chance of survival. It was almost flu season in Laos, and we were asked to deliver 375,000 doses of donated vaccine. The challenge wasn't just keeping them at a constant 41 degrees so they wouldn't go bad, but also figuring out the best route, coordinating the right people across 5 countries, and planning for anything that could happen over the 9,000-mile journey. To make things even more complicated, we only had a few days to pull it off. I'm Margaret Clayton with the UPS Healthcare team. We've always believed that our technology and our people working together can solve any problem. Our team monitored the vaccines in their temperature-controlled containers from Kentucky to freezing cold Alaska, then Seoul, Shenzhen, and Bangkok, and then another 8-hour drive north through tropical heat. We kept the vaccines within the required temperature range the entire way. From the moment you find out you're pregnant, you live for that baby's future. And when something as simple as a flu shot can give a child a better start, it becomes so much more than just a job.
Okay, thank you. Now the fun part. I get to do Q&A, or I did get to do the A, and you're doing the Q, I think. So any topic, doesn't have to be on humanitarian logistics. Yes, please.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Jose, and I'm actually going to graduate this upcoming May, and many of the people here, I imagine, also, they're looking for full-time jobs. So what would you say to the students that put more weight into the location or the salary that they're getting, and not as much weight into the core values of the company that they're going to be a part of?
Wow, that's a good question. It was so easy for me 30 some odd years ago. I think it's a long career, right? Very long career, and obviously everybody wants to start off at the highest salary, et cetera, right off the bat. It kind of gives you a little bragging rights and all of that. And we know that you're business students, so you know the compounded value of all that. But I do think culture is really important. Because starting for a high salary or for a location and shortchanging culture and the things that I was talking about on what some companies are doing and what others are not, I think in the long run you probably won't stay. It won't be a good fit. And it'll take you a little bit to figure that out as well. So I do think it's a balance. Understanding perhaps you've got great passions here in your geography. If it's Atlanta, you're involved in things that are important to you and you want to balance that. But not balancing to the culture and the type of company, I think, would be a mistake that you would regret. And I think that those things can be balanced. I mean, competitive companies that are doing the right thing are still the competitive companies with competitive salaries and competitive opportunities. So why shortchange, the investigation of the total?
Yes. Hi. I had a question. Yes. So you talked a little bit about sharing, like with your joint partners and some of your, solutions that you're working with people. How do you balance that, like with sharing the information, the procedures, and like the data that you actually collect at UPS, while also staying competitive in your environment?
Well, I don't think that they're very separate. I think when you are engaged with your partners, the information is being shared on both sides, and the data, the transactional data of those kinds of things are probably not the secret sauce at UPS. It's really more about our network and how we get things done. So I don't think that there's really, a big challenge for us in that area with the kind of partnerships that we have. I do think that, UPS benefits as well. So like the drone experiment, for example, obviously we're watching, investigating and investing in that technology pretty significantly with other partners as well. And you make those investments because you want to see how the technology is going to develop and you want to learn from it. So it sort of is a two-way street, and that unique partnership with Gavi and the robotics company, I think that's one that's just sort of a win-win for everybody. But you're right, it's a balance. But I don't think in the space where we're doing our social engagements that's a big risk.
Teresa, we have a question.
Yes.
So you mentioned how right about now is when we should start asking ourselves what our visions and goals are for our own futures. But to give some perspective on your life and your journey, I was wondering what your visions and goals were when you were in our seats and like.
Yeah, I was wondering if that would come, because I had to think a lot about that when I was preparing for this talk. And I came straight out of college, and I was like that kid there that at 6 I said, all right, I want to be a lawyer. I don't know, it just seemed like a big power job that I was, as a woman, I wanted to do. And I got all the way through undergraduate. And I think that I didn't go on to law school because I got to sort of the junior year in college, and I didn't know why I wanted to do that. I'm like, all right, I don't know why I want to do that. It's always been this thing that I said I was going to do. And back then we weren't encouraged to look at companies from a social sustainability or all these the culture and all of those things. So I remember finishing up college with a business degree, and I was kind of tired of being broke. So I thought, wanted to make a little money, and then I'd figure it out later. I started with UPS, and I happened to start with the company. I taught the HR manager's kids Irish step dancing at the time. And he says, why don't you come down to UPS and interview? And I'm like, all right. And he said, well, you are going to have to drive a truck at some point. I said, well, do other women drive trucks? He says, well, a few. I said, okay, well, other women can do it, I can do it too, right? You know, I'm straight out of college, I can do anything. And, you know, so I started there, but the culture, I think, just grew. And I became part of that. Not to say it didn't have ups and downs on a 30-year-long career, but I got there by accident almost. I didn't do the research. I talked to one of the dad's kids. I didn't want to leave Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the time, and it just sort of all fell. It wasn't, and I lucked out. I look back and I thought, well, I lucked out. I lucked out getting into a company that had a really strong culture, and that's what kept me there. This culture of promotion from within, and over a long career, I have had probably many careers, 4 or 5 big careers within that time span. I've gone from finance to marketing to investor relations, communication area, presidents of the international business and U.S. businesses and things like that. And I think that those kinds of things were what, I just never got bored, I never looked back. But when I started, I was that person that gave the answer at 6 and didn't really think about it until much later. And that's maybe why I'm passionate about that topic, because not everybody lucks out. And thinking about that ahead of the time seems like something really important to do.
Hi.
Sorry, I don't know who's picking, me or you guys. Go ahead.
In terms of company strategy, how does UPS plan to react to like alternative delivery methods, like the Amazon pickup store right outside?
Oh, yes. So I think we are on all fronts. Amazon is out there in your campus, kind of a just for Amazon, right? We're putting lockers in different places across the U.S. as we speak, and they're UPS lockers, right? So now we're looking at multi-carrier lockers in apartment complexes, for example, because the heads of the apartment management offices don't want to hold the packages anymore, but they also can't just have UPS or Amazon or FedEx or whatever. So we're looking at all of that to change the world. And by the way, those things really help UPS because we eliminate walk times for our drivers, ultimately eliminate miles, we can become more sustainable, we save money, we improve productivity. Access points has been another way that we have stretched out so that if you are not home, and you're not in an area where we can drive or release your package, we now send it to a convenience store within the area of your home. And again, another way to meet our customer and consumers' needs by getting proximity to an ease of access to the packages and to your goods. So there's just a number of things that we're doing, and on the technology front as well. We talked about the drones. We are, investigating in a lot of technologies that will help us certainly continue to compete and meet the needs of our customers. Yes.
So my name is Vishal, and I'm an industrial engineering student here at Georgia Tech. So with the rise of e-commerce businesses, especially with Amazon, Walmart.com, and different businesses like that, I'm assuming UPS is benefiting because of the increased transportation routes and everything like that. What is the big challenge you see with the increase in e-commerce, whether it be in terms of distribution centers or more of the actual number of trucks out on the road? What do you think is the biggest limiting factor for UPS and even companies like FedEx, your bigger competitors?
Well, there's one, let me talk about it as an opportunity first. It's a significant growth for UPS from the retail sector, which, is good, especially in the U.S. and frankly across the globe, where manufacturing and some of the other industrial segments are flat to negative. So it's been a very good and lucky growth spurt, because without that, things wouldn't be quite as strong. So it's an opportunity. I think it's also, from an opportunity perspective, we deliver, we're going to the residences today. So the more packages that we deliver at each stop, that stop density helps us become more profitable. Okay, lowers our cost, and the cost for those multiple deliveries at the stop are very meaningful. The opposite side of that, of course, is a challenge. If those packages are not going to the same stop, we're adding stops at a greater rate, which is costly. Thus, the access point and the UPS store and some of those things that we're doing, besides our technologies and operations that help us really manage the network very tightly. So I think we think about it as much more of an opportunity. We're obviously one of the major delivery companies for the e-commerce customer. So we enjoy the growth, and of course, it's building for that infrastructure. Some of the, kind of from a marketing perspective, some of the interesting questions are around the same day. Is that really going to be the requirement of a consumer over time? Those are more costly for any business, frankly, whether it's Walmart or Amazon or anyone, to deliver, your milk and cheese and toilet paper or whatever the same day. That's a costly transportation move. So will that be a trend that really takes hold? And how will UPS continue to meet that need of the consumer and the shipper from that perspective? That's one that we're wrestling with, testing and doing a lot of things with partners in that area to meet that customer demand, but is it really a long-term demand? So there's just so much in this space, and we're all over it, frankly, every day. Yes?
Hello, thanks for being here.
Terry?
Can you tell us a little bit about Catalyst and your role at Catalyst, and why a public sector, a private sector organization like UPS values that kind of service as well as your service at Fernbank?
Yeah, absolutely. Catalyst is the leading nonprofit group that does research around women in business. And I've been on I chair the advisory board now. But we have, UPS has had a long-term relationship with Catalyst, and we didn't talk about it today, but diversity and inclusion is also culturally a very top priority for UPS and continues to be. And this relationship with Catalyst has helped us have the tools at our fingertips and the important research that helps us in our human resource function understand the biases, the things, the fact versus the myth out there in the workplace, so that we can become a more diverse and inclusive company. So I think it's a really important relationship. And by the way, the member companies of Catalyst are like the who's who of the Fortune 100. There are a lot of great companies that are partnering with Catalyst to ensure that they are putting the right behaviors in place across their leadership group, so that we promote a diverse and inclusive organization. So very important work that they do, and very high quality research, and well thought out. So I think it's a quality organization for us also to be associated with.
Teresa, we have just a few more questions.
Sure.
So down in the middle of the front.
You had mentioned that the ideas of Milton Friedman are holding less sway, but one could argue with that in that you talk about Enron in the year 2000, AIG during the financial crisis, the pharmaceutical companies that jack up their prices for sick people with life-threatening diseases, Volkswagen and what it did with the emissions scandal, and every day you see corporate wrongdoing in the business pages. I just don't see where you get the idea that Milton Friedman is dying. I just don't see it.
Well,
Thank you.
no, I mean, we're not at the North Star yet of all businesses working with the ethical construct that I think many of us do. But I think it is more of a topic today, and it's more of a consideration of this generation in the room about who they want to work for and where they want to be longer term because of those missteps of those companies. And yeah, there's always going to be that contingent, but are we further down the development of businesses truly giving back to society and understanding that that's good for their business? I think we're further down that continuum than we ever been. And I think it's going to continue. I don't think we're going to stop. But there's always going to be the the not so appropriate behavior out there by companies and businesses. We compete with some of them. When we do business across the world, the standard that we put in our buildings at UPS right down the road from here is the same standard in India, China, and anywhere else in the world, which makes us sometimes very uncompetitive against the local players because we require that level of safety and assurance for our people, and that's how we're going to play, and not have others play that way.
Hi, so I'm also an industrial engineer, and a lot of my friends have worked at UPS. And they were telling me a little bit about their experience there, and a lot of them have said that their coworkers were like they have families, and a lot of their managers were, in their 30s, 40s, and despite the age gap, they felt like they were a part of the team and they were very well understood. So I think you mentioned about the BRG program and relating to like the millennials, like our age. So I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on that.
Absolutely, and I think the double-edged sword of a great culture where people stay there for 30 years is that they stay there for 30 years. And as you bring in, new people, younger people in their career, the mix is going to seem, the average is going to be skewed. And I think we recognize that on all kind of issues of diversity. And for our millennials and young people, it was just as important to us to put in business resources groups. So the business resources groups are basically, we have a women's leadership business research group. We've got probably about 10 or 12 of them, African American, Asian, Hispanic, and we have a millennial. And it gives me, since I lead that one, I'm on the management committee that has that particular one, as well as I'm engaged with the women's leadership. It gives me the opportunity to speak directly with our younger partners in the company and what they're struggling with, what they, how they fit in, how we can culturally, kind of bring them along. But there are also groups that, they are a business. They are about building community. So they have community activities. They have business activities, growing the business. And a lot of them become, sort of social, but it is also a way that we get more senior leaders to engage with these BRG groups so that we can hear and listen and make sure that we're addressing those things that might keep you from staying at UPS.
Teresa?
Yes.
Hi. So you said that UPS are kind of united problem solvers, working together to solve, social issues. What type of experience have you had in those type of projects?
Me personally?
Yeah, you personally.
Okay, well, I have done, I guess in my career, I've done things all through my career, mostly through, sort of our United Way organization. We're one of the top United Way supporters in the U.S., and likewise, we do similar types of, we pick similar partners outside the U.S. So engaging in the United Way community has been a big way, certainly for me, to become involved. Obviously, in what I'm doing here and talking about how, as a chief marketing officer, I think about humanitarian logistics as part of our brand, and living that is really important to me. And supporting clearly the groups from my functional perspective, from marketing and communications, and how we approach and communicate and build materials around these types of things as part of the business type job. I have not had the benefit of some of our partners that have really, have been in Rwanda and have done those things, but someday maybe I'll get a shot to do that. I don't know if that's really answered your question or.
Teresa, I have one final question. It's about leadership. So obviously serendipity played a role for you coming to UPS, but you've clearly been very successful at UPS. And I'm just wondering what kind of skills or traits or decision making that you made that helped you progress through the ranks at UPS to the position that you have now.
Okay, well, that could be a long answer, but I'll. No, that's okay. It's a great question, one that I get asked and reflect on a lot. But I have to say, when I look back, you get out of college, or you do your MBAs or your extended education, and that just doesn't stop. The learning doesn't stop, and if you let it stop, I think that's what halts you. In my career, it was continuously being asked to go and do different things in different parts of the world with different people. My background is predominantly finance and accounting, and now I head up marketing for the organization. Matter of fact, that was about 1.5 years ago, and I was still surprised what UPS has asked me to do and to stretch. And I think that that's part of this willingness to do all that, to move in and outside of your comfort zone, to continuously build your acumen and your skills. UPS is a 24/7 global company, and you can't lead this company by sitting in the same place and doing the same thing, if that's your true aspiration. So I think that's part of it. Then after that, I mean, it gets down to basics. You got to execute. You got to get it done. You've got to differentiate by, kicking the can, down the road, and making improvements in every job that you've been in. Creating a vision about where you're going, being able to execute that vision, and being able to communicate and inspire others to follow it, to get them excited about where you want to go, and to move a team. So it's the people management aspect of the job. It's the ability to think through, roadmaps and processes to see and decide on a strategy, and it's absolutely about being able to execute that. So I think those are all the sort of the big things, but the real openness to continuously learning and taking risks in your career and stepping way outside your comfort zone every time you get a chance just builds that, that leadership and that skill and gut, I think, that you need ultimately to lead a big function like I'm doing today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.